Welcome to the What's Your Revolution show, a show for men and the people who love them, where we discuss how men can find and embrace the revolution within themselves, where people can find and embrace the revolution within themselves. I am your host, Dr. Charles Corporal, joined by my good friend, my good friend, my dude, my buddy, as I say, my dear brother, on our special series of conversation here on what I'm going to entitle now. Like we haven't even talked about it. We're going to call this series "Revolt and Evolve." And
Okay.
that's our title. Dr. Travis Batts, a world-renowned cardiologist, all the things. But we've developed this relationship and friendship that spans not only these conversations that we're having with you, revolutionaries. We talk at length, almost every week, but when we can, to make sure that we are checking in to do our brotherly duties with each other, to make sure that as we revolt and evolve into the people that we want to be, we have the people who are accountable, that we are accountable to, and will hold us accountable for our growth and just the camaraderie. I think that we talk about all the time on this show, Revolutionaries, that you know, find your midwives. Well, I found mine, and I hopefully that Dr. Batts has found his, and that these series of conversations that we will have for the length of this year will be illuminating, mind blowing, thought provoking, and an opportunity for you to grow into the revolutionary version of yourself based on these conversations. Because I know that not only do I laugh, but I learn as I go back and listen to Dr. Batts, because he is such a I'm going to say a force. He is a knowledgeable force when it comes to the world. And so I just want to say thank you to him. So welcome back, my friend, my dude,
Thank
my
you.
guy, my midwife. What's going on with you?
Hey, what's going on, midwife? You know I am happy to be. I needed this. This is more than intellectually stimulating. This is also cathartic. And thank you. And we may touch on it later, but thank you for being there, being available. Um, and the thing is, it's one of those things where through your show, and this isn't me just being a super fan. This is me literally looking, and we talked about it. I scan your shows to see, is there something out there that can help? And even when I'm talking to other people and they're going through issues with either how to develop their entrepreneurship or how to understand the relationship that they had or didn't have with their father, or how do they approach leadership? I think that those things are key and central to what we're doing and how we're doing it. So thank you for letting me share in this vision. I mean, I feel like I'm a part of the team, so to speak. So I think that's wonderful. So
You look, you're right. You're right. This is a team effort, and so many people. I don't know if you know. We haven't talked about. So many people talk about this banter that we have been able to establish. Look. I need to start paying Commander Corey Doolittle, because his name is said so many times on this show. He and the Colonel Jahari Hemphill, and the Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Graham out there in California. All of my dudes, man, good men of Omega as well, who are just doing their things in the world, who are avid listeners of the show. But Commander Doolittle said, he was like, yeah, I'm loving this format that you and Travis have, and just the vulnerability that you two bring to this opportunity to hear two well-educated Black men be open and vulnerable, and all of the things allows him to be more vocal and vulnerable in his life. So shout out to my good friends who are avid listeners to the show. My dude Brian Tyler out here in Virginia, who is also a super fan of the show. I got to give a good shout out to my team. Speedy, who's a part of the team now, is our social media manager. Sarah, and the man behind the current wheels of steel, my line brother Seiko. So shout out to them. So brother, we this is a free flowing show, and this is our opportunity to just check in what's going on in the world. So what's on your mind? Let's start there. What's on your mind?
I know you really. I was gonna say you really want to know. I know you really want to know. I mean, um, a lot. In the and I know that wasn't a profound answer, but it's one of those things where that there's so many things that you're trying to unpack emotionally. You have so many targets that you have to hit, and it goes back to that conversation of, and this isn't so much the grind. This is just how do you restabilize yourself? How do you hit the
Mm-hmm.
reset button and restart when you've had an event occur in your life?
Mm-hmm.
And words that we use in medicine, or resiliency, and we use those terms, but it's easy to teach it. It's just harder to live it when you're
Mm-hmm.
in it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And again, that's why I thank you for being there and helping me understand. And it harkens me back to um, a recent show. You filmed it back last year, where it talks about developing relationships and these connections that you have. And the analogy that was given was, the relationship between a child and a parent is a boat and kind of a dinghy that's attached.
Yeah.
And as the dinghy, you kind of
Yes.
float out there, and you don't worry because you know that you're getting pulled in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But when that attachment is too long and you can't see that boat, and what I want to thank you and everybody that reached out during this time of challenge for me, they never let my rope get too long,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
independent as I am, how are you? Nope, you're doing well. Even my daughter, it was a surreal experience when I got home from everything that occurred this weekend. Um, I don't know. I guess I just didn't seem like her normal dad,
Yeah.
and she literally just paused what she was doing and said, "Hey, Dad, how are you?" And I'm like, "I'm fine." She's like, "No, no, how are you?" And I'm
Yeah.
like,
That's a
"Whoa,
big question. That's that when
right,
somebody cares about you and and you know that that person cares about you. When somebody says, "How are you? How are you? How are you?" It's not the typical, "Oh, I'm good." You know what I'm saying?
right,
Which can be a typical answer for, for men. Like, I'm good, because
right,
having this conversation with four men before we recorded this session today is that we were able to be like grown, and I'll say that because like grown men in their 40s and 50s, and actually a 60-year-old having an intergenerational conversation. And
mm,
when you say, "How are you?" that ability to open up and say, "Well, this is how I am," and to be unafraid instead of giving the standard answer, "I'm good," because I often say that all the time. How you doing? Well, I'm good. And then I realize in the moment I might not be good, but I've been so used to saying it
exactly,
that I'm so used to saying that it becomes, as my father would say, a rote answer.
right,
And
right."
yeah, that's the thing when it becomes a rote answer. So what was your answer to your daughter?
I'm ashamed to say now because I said I'm good, but then when she probed, I kind of backed off and said, it's different. I'm working through it. I really didn't have an answer, right? Because I think that point you speak about is not an uncommon afferent.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's something that we do. It's almost this built-in American optimism, and I don't say that in
Mm,
a bad way. But when you think about our country compared to, we typically have this brighter outcome, the lights at the end of the tunnel. This will happen, and so we always make that assumption. Not to say that we shouldn't be positive or optimistic, but I think what it does is that it creates this false sense of strength, security, and almost this unrealistic insulation of pain,
yeah.
right? Because
Mm-hmm.
when you do that, it forces the other person to say, "I don't want to push, but man, I know that he's in a place," and that's why I thank you for saying, "Nah, I'm gonna keep texting you until you respond." I'm gonna keep just like and it was odd. Like even uh, one of my friends who knew and actually came up to the hospital, and I was not expecting that because they didn't know the family, they knew me, and so they drove 30 miles, came up there, and I'm like, "Why are you here?" They're like, "Because we know you're not good,
Right.
right? You are this person for
Mm-hmm.
everybody." And I think when we talk about this show and we talk about revolting and evolve and being that better version of yourself, part of it is understanding your own emotional intelligence
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
knowing when and how to say ouch, right? Uh,
Wow. Yes. Yes.
because how do you say ouch? So for instance, when I hear you talk about your role at Camelback Ventures and how, and we had this discussion where hit the off button, if you didn't pull the plug, if you didn't do that, you still would keep going back, and it wouldn't allow them to do the things that they needed to do and you to break away. But at the same time, when you're the driver of the boat, you can't get sleepy,
You can't
right?
get
You
sleep.
you, you can't get sleepy. You
Right.
can't say ouch. And so how do you do that as an entrepreneur, as a parent, as a man trying to steer these things? And I think that's the dilemma that I have, because that is one skill that I didn't really see my father have,
Mm.
right? I didn't see him show weakness in a way other than when it was something that would directly hurt me. I mean, he worked, tree job man. He just worked all the
Three
time, right?
jobs all the
Tree
time,
job
man.
man, right? So he worked all the time. He did this. He didn't mind doing even though he had a master's in business, he would still collect can.
Mm-hmm.
It was this mindset that's like, I'm not going to be beat. And so that's what I saw and that's what I took. But he never said, but you also have to be vulnerable. And I think that's that's something that I'm learning by
Yeah.
listening to two parts on the show. And I can tell you it's not easy, because as men having that conversation, and the example I give is when you sent me your goals for the year, I didn't respond for 2-3 days because I didn't know how. Right? I didn't know. Hey, he's being super open. This is odd. I'm gonna fall back. I'm gonna fall back and just kind of hang and see what comes next. And then hey, did you get my? I did, but I don't know how to respond. I don't know how. Do I reciprocate that
No.
vulnerability? Do I? I don't know, right? And so I think that's one of the challenges when you're in this process of revolting and evolving, because
Mm.
for most men, and this isn't central to men, I think we're all taught to have a certain level of strength, whether you're a man or woman, a certain level of independence. But where does that have to shift and say, ready for this one? I need you. I
Yeah.
need your
Mhm.
help. Where does
Mm.
that shift in that evolution occur so that now you can be the vulnerable person? You
Mhm.
can be, and I don't know. I mean, I'm looking for that continued uh, revolution
Yeah.
and evolution in who I am emotionally. So it's a deep conversation.
Yeah,
Deep
it is, and
conversation.
and there's a couple of things I want to pull out, but I want our revolutionaries to know, like we're talking around something, and if you could just kind of give them just a small, a small understanding of what happened this weekend, so they can get a little, however much you want to tell, they can get a little bit of context because yeah.
Okay. So you all may or may not know this is, Dr. Corporal and I connect on many levels. One of them is that um, we have or had very loving fathers who kind of showed us what we needed to do, did everything they needed to do. Both of our fathers, unfortunately, succumbed to some of the complications of dementia. My father passed in October 2017, and since that time, it has been a challenge because but I lost my father before I truly lost my father. But he ingrained in me um, basically these aphorisms and these sayings and these different things that I've been able to pull and use throughout my life. Well, prior to my father passing, the Lord saw fit to bring another man into my life that really took that role on. And I don't think he didn't push his way in. It was just this organic relationship that occurred through the love of photography, the love of just being gregarious and helping individuals and people. And we met on the football field. And long story short, Mr. Magic Gray kind of stepped in. And even when my father passed, he was one of the first people to reach out and talk to me and help me through that. Brilliant man, brilliant. And he had a saying where he would talk about what's your GPS.
Mm.
I know we say global positioning, but he was very Christ based. And his goal was to say the GPS can't get you where you want to go. unless you know where you need to be,
Right.
right? Because you have to put it in. And that's what he really worked with me on, is saying, I know you want to be this great doctor, but you got to know how you look before you get there. You got to see it before you be it, and it was just this constant. And, we use the term on this show, how do you show up for someone?
Hmm.
And, Dr. Corpu and I talked about, I was in Afghanistan and people couldn't reach me. It's a war zone, right? But he found a way to, through internet calls, to just literally call me for 10 seconds and ask me how I'm doing.
Wow.
Well, unfortunately, he had an incurable cancer that progressed rapidly. And over the past 6 months, myself, we worked, did everything we could to really reconcile his comfortability, looking at different options and things. But on Sunday, just yesterday, unfortunately, he passed.
Mm. Sorry.
And I mean, as a clinician, we build up the ability to try to insulate our emotions, because
Hmm.
as a cardiologist, I see death and dying far too frequently, far too often. And not that you become numb, but you learn how to connect and then disconnect. But this was one of those instances where I couldn't disconnect.
Right. Right.
He was like that second father, just
Hmm.
teaching you things and doing things. And there are parts of me that smile when I think about some of the things he said. There are parts of me that, even today at work, that were triggering, because he played such a big role every morning, whether it was a text, whether it was a
Hmm.
call. I mean, he made that a priority. He did the same thing for his family, and just to see, I don't know, and you always are in this space, not so much of blame, but where you evaluate, could I have given better counsel? Could I have done this? Could I have done that? Um, and much of it is just you rethinking and replaying those things. And I know it's not uncommon. I did the same thing with my father, where, I said, well, maybe if I would have identified this or done that. And I didn't tell you this, with my father, I was initially the person that diagnosed him with Alzheimer's
Oh,
disease.
wow.
Yeah, we were driving back. He had picked me up from college. We were driving back, and my dad, again, he's a military man. He reads compasses and maps, and we're heading east. And I fell asleep in the car briefly. Upon waking up, we were from Kansas to North Carolina. We were heading to Chicago.
Wow.
And when I asked him, he didn't. And of course, he was, and I didn't think much of it. But then after that, and so I had to be the one to talk to him first, and to talk to my
It's
parents, and to
tough.
talk to my family.
Yes.
So yeah, but I don't, again, I don't want, but that is what we're talking around.
Yeah.
And it played such a big role on what my weekend
Mm.
was, and what it should have been. And I'm glad I was able to show up and be there and be present for the family and for Mr. Gray. Um, but it still hurts. It's still
Yeah.
tough. It's still
Yeah.
fresh. And even though I know the 5 stages of grief, um, it doesn't make it any easier to know that I'm here, and at some point I'm going to get to acceptance. I'm not there yet. I'm not
Yeah.
there yet.
No.
So
But I appreciate you sharing. And, I know our guests, our revolutionaries are with you, um, as a part of this process. And I'm happy that, as you said, we've connected on a number of levels, professional, personal, to become tremendous friends in a short, very, fast friends in a very short period of time. And so the ability to pick up the phone on a Saturday afternoon and be like, yo, what's going on?
right,
And to hopefully be a moment of solace and opportunity for you to just, like you said, to be vulnerable and say, this is what I'm going through. And um, what it speaks to me, like I said, there were a couple of things that I wanted to really, really pull out, is that I'll call it mentorship, but the depth of this is pseudo fatherhood. When you lose a father, um, when you lose a father, and as close as we were to our fathers. It is a huge void. And as we said, as we talked about in the green room, like post Christmas, I have been trying as much as I can to celebrate my father, to not be sad that he's gone, to miss him greatly. I actually dreamt about him last night and actually felt somewhat of an embrace. That we were able to embrace
Mm,
each other in my dreams. But it does, it does present a void. When you are, when you are a daddy's boy, and you grow up with that affinity and affection, and then when they leave, and then someone else steps in, someone else
right.
steps in and kind of sees that space, and then you lose them. And so fathers are strategic male figures in our lives at our times, whether it be our fathers or people who step in, or father figures have a tremendous role in our growth. And the point that I think that I'm belaboring here is that it doesn't matter. I don't think that at whatever age, and maybe because we're still, we're middle-aged men, having that father figure, or that mentor or role model, even now, is still significant to our growth.
Right.
We keep talking about revolting and evolving, and like, who are those people, or that that we can find to help us revolt and evolve, that when we're stuck in spaces, or who can text us. I keep thinking, like, in this phase right now, who is that for me? So I understand the great loss that you are feeling right now, because it's hard. It's hard because, as I think and talk, is that people are looking at us to mentor them. We're at that
Exactly.
phase of our lives where, I sat on the phone with my social media strategist today, who's 27, 28 years old, and I'm mentoring him through,
Hmm.
through his challenges and successes. I'm trying to impart advice to him on what's going on in his life and how he can navigate that. And then I turn around and I'm like, well, shit, who's really doing that for me? You know what I'm saying? And
Exactly.
that's the tough piece. I think that, um, we need mentorship, as at all phases of our lives. I haven't talked to anybody who's older than us about their mentorship, whether the 80-year-old is mentoring the 65-year-old. I don't know. But I do know that where we are in this phase, that we still don't know everything, and there's still the necessity for confidants, for people who have experienced the world a little bit longer and different than us, to say, I've got this goal, how do I do it? We still have goals, we still have things that we want to achieve. How do I do it? How do you, or this is how I'm feeling right now. And
Exactly.
yeah, this, like you said, like the point is, I need you. And to be able to say that, and that's not, it's not an easy thing. Everybody didn't have that skill set.
No, it's not easy. And when you think about our education system, or how we kind of navigate what it means to be a leader, to be an entrepreneur, there is this part where you have to be, you have to have that independence, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
think about the true measure of success, right? It's not necessarily SAT scores. It's not necessarily physical prowess. There was a book by Angela Duckworth that talks
Mm-hmm.
about
Yeah,
grit,
grit,
right?
exactly.
And it is the culmination of both passion and perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
And that piece of perseverance, I think, um, has a paradoxical effect, because it forces you that when you would say, "Oh, I can't keep going. Oh no, I got to persevere." Oh no, and,
Mm-hmm.
and and maybe my interpretation of that is incorrect, but when you look at the data of who succeeds and how they succeed, is at the end of the day, they don't stop. My wife and I celebrated 19 years of marriage, right? And
Congratulations. Hey, Miss Bats.
thank you, thank
Hey, Miss
you.
Bats.
Shout
I'm
out,
gonna
honey,
still get
shout
on him
out.
though.
She gonna come for you. I'm telling you, because she shows up. She shows up, and but no, I love her to life.
Yeah.
And
Congratulations. Happy
somebody
anniversary,
asked me,
brother.
appreciate it, brother. And somebody asked me, they said, well, how do you stay married for so long? I said,
Mm.
man, it's easy. Don't leave.
Mm.
That's it.
Right.
and
Oh,
and
we gonna
that
get into
pause.
that. We gonna get into that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
don't leave, right? Because at the end of the day, and this is my thought process about. I am not a marriage counselor. We that there is I forget a few weeks ago we had a beautiful discussion about marriage, and it talked about, do you feel safe? Do you feel
Hmm.
heard? Do you feel, these four key things, and they weren't
Hmm.
love languages, but they were akin to Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yes.
but in a relational sense,
Hmm.
right? And so I think that's fantastic. But for me, it was knowing that I'm not perfect, knowing that by the time I interact with somebody else, they're not going to be perfect because I'm
Hmm.
going to push some of my imperfections on them, and then just realizing that you have to exist. This is from another show, in the 95%.
Yeah.
What
Hmm.
we show on Facebook is that 5% of trips to, Jamaica, or that
The
5% of us.
DR.
Exactly.
You
The
know.
DR, right? Hang parasail. You
There
got
you
me on
go.
one of them parasails. I don't know if I'm gonna do it again. No, I don't know. I don't know. But
uh,
it's that 5% that we show, but doing that
yeah.
95%,
Hmm.
making sure that I put a dryer sheet in the dryer, making
Mm.
sure that,
Tell the
you
story.
know, I, yeah, doing those little things is
Yes.
actually what drives the engine. And so you got to stay to see those things work. Right. And I think as we loop this thing back around to that whole concept of perseverance, even when you're staying and you don't feel as strong as you do, it's hard to say, hey, I need help. But I think that show that articulates, and again, it's just because my brain is going, hey, I need to feel safe. I need to feel
Yeah.
heard.
Hmm.
I need to feel valued. I need to, those things are important. Right. And so I think being able to speak that language of asking and being okay with what might come back now.
Hmm.
You can't, and we all ask with the expectation that they're going to know exactly how to answer us. But the difficulty is by making yourself vulnerable, you don't know what's going to come back. And I think for
That's the
me,
scary part of vulnerability, though.
go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's all I need to say. That's just the scary part of vulnerability is that particularly when you ask the question, you have to be ready and prepared for what the answer is.
Right.
Yeah. Um, and that the vulnerable answer that the vulnerable question may lead to an answer that you didn't expect.
Exactly.
But if you've created a safe space for both parties, then the answer should not, at least the answer should not be so appalling that it hurts. Or maybe it does hurt, but you still feel safe to experience the hurt with that person. Particularly if it's a question about your relationship or you or whatever, you know, by creating that safe space. And I think if we just tie a bow on the fathers, like good fathers and sons have the ability to have created that safe space with each other.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll take that. But what I'm going to ask you to do now is put that psychology hat on. Put that hat on, because what I want you to do, because I don't know. I got a 15-year-old son.
mm,
I have ooh man, I'm getting old. A 20, almost 28-year-old son, right?
wow,
And as a dad, I know I look great, right? I still can run a 40, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
as a
yeah,
dad, how do I create that safe space? And there's a term that I've used in closed circles. I don't know if it's
mhm,
been used before, but it's called the gentrification of the young African American male,
mm,
right? And my thought is that there's a certain toughness that I had to grow up with to
yeah,
get out of from where I was from. My kids will never have those same experiences,
mm,
right? We both appreciate that experience is a teacher. It's not necessarily the best teacher. And sometimes you can learn, hey, you don't want your kid to have that experience. But when it comes to being able to navigate certain things and being able to see things before they happen and being able to, make a certain turn in a neighborhood and know, okay, I probably need to, and I'm not saying, and
this
maybe
ain't my
this is
neighborhood.
outside of this. Exactly. But those are things that I, and I don't know, hey, is that how I want to equip them? And so creating that safe space for open conversation as a dad is challenging. And so just if we expand it to non-dads, to women, to
Mhm.
relationships, how do you create that safe space? What are there? You know me, I like 3 steps, 5 steps.
Mhm.
How do you create a safe space so that we're not thrown back when someone says or does something? We say, okay, but they say it in a way that doesn't hurt as much. How do you create a safe space?
So the question is, how do you create a safe space with your sons?
With my sons, in well, how about just broadly in relationships? Because it may be different if it's a romantic relationship, it's if a business
Hmm.
relationship, but I think that there are probably foundational tenets
Hmm.
that can transcend some of those things. And when you had the guest on that talked about conscious leadership,
Hmm.
she highlighted first, you got to be responsible for where you are. So I
Yeah.
didn't know if when you create, but she also talked about creating a space where as a leader, you can turn around and say, hey, look, I didn't do what I needed to do, or I made
Right.
this
Right.
mistake. And
Right.
I think those same tenets, and maybe I'm trying to, Occam's razor it too much, make it too simple, right? But I want a cheat code
That
on
boy,
how.
real smart. He real. He said real smart. Go Google Occam's razor because I ain't gonna try. I
You,
ain't gonna
you
try
know what?
I know
Hey,
what it is, but
I
I
heard you
ain't.
say terse
Yeah, yeah.
and pericope before.
Right,
When you
right, right.
said pericope on one of the calls, I said, okay, he playing
Persnickety.
now.
I said persnickety. I
Yeah.
ain't gonna try to explain Occam's razor. But what I am going to do is try to answer this question.
Yes.
Let's think about our relationship. I think I think one of the tenets to vulnerability is time. Time. What do they say? 100 hours. It takes 100 hours of time together, somewhere between 90 and 100 hours of time for people to actually establish a friendship. And so you think about that. You think about the amount of time it takes for you to just establish like friends, to say I'm your friend. Um, and I think what happens is when you spend time together, it becomes a natural progression of let me consciously review, can I trust? Time, trust, right? And so my thing there is that the more time that I spend with you, I can then recognize whether or not I can trust you. And I want to say the foundation of vulnerability is trust. And even though we are, we have parents, or we have parents, or we are parents, it doesn't mean that the behaviors that we exhibit to the world or to our children, to relationship, will allow them to trust us. And that trust can come and go, in my opinion, because I'm thinking about I'm thinking about a current relationship with my family member, and
Okay.
that trust can come and go based on how the exhibition of behavior happens. But I think if we are consistent, you know, with the time that we spend and the trust that we build, it then allows for us to be vulnerable with each other. And I think about those times when I could just go to my father, because we had spent time together. The thing that I wrestle with now, and I feel like I failed in my sense with my relationship, because as I got older and as he got older, I never really knew what he wrestled with as a man. I think I've said that before,
You have.
but I think those are the conversations that sons and fathers and fathers and sons and mothers and relationships is one of those questions, like, what are you wrestling with in your life? Because if we can talk about what we're wrestling with in our lives with, and we can open that, but that comes from time and trust. This is what I'm wrestling with. And it may not be something bad. I'm wrestling with this opportunity around what's the next place that I'm going to sit in venture capital. I've got opportunities in front of me, like great opportunity. I'm wrestling with that. But do I trust you enough to say, I'm wrestling with this? I don't know. I need you. And I think, right, when you get to that fact, I could say to my father, I need you, because we spent so much time, and I trusted my father. I knew that my father was going to protect me. I knew that from an early age in life, that he was going to protect me. I wanted to be around him. It is this innateness. Now, every father and son may not have that, because every
Right.
every person or every man is not a good father. But for me, and it sounds like for you as well with your father, that you built a level of trust over time, and he exhibited this behavior that said, I am safe with you.
Right.
There was no point in time, there was never a point in my life where I did not feel safe with him.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So time translates to trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then that trust is further solidified over time. And I think it goes back to the point that I said with regards to, my marriage is, the way you stay.
Yeah.
Like you don't,
Mm-hmm.
now, but by no means am I saying stay if bad things are occurring, but you stay because that time you trust that, I'm going to get better. And that's why I tell people, I say, if you wrote a book on how to have the perfect marriage, it would actually just be a self-help book. Because I'm not joking. Like you
It's
would
got to
have to
start with
pick.
you.
It's got to start with
It's got
you,
to start
right?
with you.
And my wife and I did a study called "Before You Say I Do," and in the book, and we did it over 20 years ago. Well, about 20 years ago, and the book articulates all the things. It makes you list out all the things that you want in your wife, and she lists all the things that she wants in me. And now when we look back on it, all the things I said I wasn't going to do or that I couldn't do, guess what? You're doing them. And all the things. And it's this reciprocal thing that over time, we trust that we have to fill in those gaps. And I think to
Mm-hmm.
bring it back to the relational sense, whether it's a business relationship, a romantic relationship, a friendship, there's got to be places where I'm not strong, right? And you have to be the one to fill that in. And if you recognize that, don't allow both of us to be weak in that same space,
Mm-hmm.
right? One of us has to make the call to, I got an issue with, shoes being on the ground when I walk in the garage, and I'm always the one that falls over them. But I'm like, I'm not picking these shoes up, right? But at the end of the day, somebody got to pick them up, and
Yeah,
it's
pick
you.
those shoes.
Somebody gonna have to pick them
Yeah.
up, right? So when we think about that time, I think there's a certain level of impatience that exists, right? Because it should be fast. I should be swept off my feet. I should find, what do they say? Love at first sight. That's that again, that goes back into that American ideal of
Yeah.
optimism,
Mm-hmm.
perfection, and these type things, which all sounds good. But for the most part, that's not the reality. That's not what truly
No,
occurs. And
no.
I think helping people to understand that it takes work, right? And even if we speak to venture capitalism and being an entrepreneur,
It's the same
right?
thing. It's the same thing.
Same process,
Yeah.
right? And
Time, trust, affections. You know, the things. You're exactly right. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, brother.
no. That's why I wanted you to break it down, because you helped me to unpack it. I don't know. And what you're telling me. So if I say, so if, and again, I'm a football dad, and after we finish this podcast, I may go out to the track. I was going to take today to just reset my brain, but I'm also a track coach.
Right.
Love my track team. But when dads say, well, how do you build that relationship? And they just look at my son and our relationship and say, oh man, but we show that 5%. We show him, competing in robotics world
Mm-hmm.
championships and doing all this stuff, right? But it is those times in the car where it's that awkward speak, right? Where,
Yeah.
how are you doing? Fine. Where are you going? Fine. Do you have this? Fine. And then as a father or in any relationship, you got to break through that,
You
right?
gotta,
You
you
have to
gotta, you
break
gotta
through
break through
that
that.
and
Exactly.
really dig down and really drill down and take the time to have those tough conversations so that
Mm-hmm.
you can build trust. I'm trying to come up with some sort of acronym. I'm
No,
fighting. My
I
brain
know
is
you will.
going,
Look, we'll
right?
put it in the show
You,
notes. We'll put it in the show notes. But I mean, you're right. And I just, and here's the thing. For me, I was an only child, and so my
Mhm.
dad was an only child. So for us, I'm going to make the hypothesis that we were each other's. Once we were past the father son piece, when he could realize that my son is on his way. I don't have to father, but I also love hanging out with my son, and I love hanging out with my dad. And once that fathering was over, there was still that's my dad and I'm your son, but I want to spend time with you. I want to revere this time with you. Like we would go to basketball games, we would go to football games. You know what I'm saying? I traveled with him to his homecoming. I mean, there
Oh
were times when
man.
he would come to New Orleans, and I'm like, all right, you know, Mom, we're out. Like I just want to go. I would take my dad to the frat house. I mean, you know, just to be with him. It was
Right.
because of time, trust, affection, right? But you know, the thing you said, and patience. My father had to be. We had to be patient with each other. You know, my father had to watch me grow and then and steer just like yours. And I think the point that we're saying, I think the point that I'm saying to you is when it comes to your sons, and I don't know, I don't have a child. You know, I can only hypothesize, but I can only speak from my experience with my dad is that we had awkward times when I was an adolescent, but he still said, "Hey, come jump in the car with me and let's just go." You know,
Right.
and we didn't have all the distractions that our kids have. The kids have now. I didn't.
I
There
agree.
wasn't a phone in my hand. There wasn't a tablet. There wasn't all the things. We had to listen to the radio together. And and I distinctly remember a time when we were in the car and I was just singing a song. I was like, "Well, Dad, how do I know the words?" And I'm asking my dad. He was like, "Well, you're at that age where you're just gonna remember. You're gonna sing songs and they're gonna come." And I remember him saying that. And
Wow.
look, I'm 12, 13. I remember that. But that was times in the car, you know? I remember when he stopped driving and I remember looking at him with his hat down, sitting low in the seat, and I'm taking him to get his favorite, you know, number one at Wendy's. And I'm thinking, I'm seeing the role reversal, but
Right.
I'm loving it because it's time with him. And you know, I'm loving it, but I'm also like, I wanted to do something else, but he was like, "Can you take me to get a Subway sandwich, or can you take me to Wendy's?" And I'm like,
And you
"Sure."
take it.
And then I'm looking over, and I'm like, "I can't get this time back."
Right.
And and so I think with any relationship, with sons or daughters or business partners, whatever it is, it's time, and it's consciously showing people that they can trust you. And once trust is built, things explode.
Exactly.
You know, things explode. Think about, you know, 19 years of you and Mrs. Betts, you know, where the trust and what's explode? Children, you know,
Right.
and all of the things. And and revolutionaries, I know what you're going to say because you know what I'm about to say is that Dr. Batts is successful in life, right? Most likely because Mrs. Batts poured into him,
That is true.
you know? For the last 19, you think about the last 19 years of your life, what you could have been and who you are.
Exactly. No,
And
you speaking to it. It makes that point where she stayed when I had the 36-hour shift and came home and was grumpy and forgot to do X and left this. It's all these little things that 95%. Right? It's that 95% of the mundane, everyday,
Mhm.
even now. I mean, as I was coming home from the office today, she texted me this list of how to, and don't laugh, revolutionary, of how to turn on the washer and move stuff to the dry. Because I don't know. I've never had to navigate that space. Like, I guess it's a first world problem, but I'm blessed to allow other parts of my brain to do. It's just this weird
Look,
week week.
like you had to do what?
Yeah, no, but no, it speaks to, like you says, and there's something that I talk to pretty much, I say all my kids, right? Because I coach. And so I ask them, I say, what are the two most valuable things in life? And without hesitation, anybody I mentor, any child I've coached will tell you the two most valuable things in life are time and opportunity.
Time and opportunity.
Sometimes when you have the time, you don't have the opportunity.
Mm,
Sometimes when you have the opportunity, you just don't have the time. But whenever those two things meet, whenever that synergy occurs, you have to take advantage of that
yeah.
situation, grab it, and run with it.
Mm,
And oftentimes it occurs. I'm gonna pivot into kind of another one of those points, right? It's a choice point.
There it is, man. I look, it's been in my mind. It's been in my mind the entire. I was like, it's coming. I was like, it's coming.
Yep. So go ahead. And it wasn't until we started talking about time, trust, tough conversations, connected, those type things. And I'm like, man, this is. But it is those points in life where you have to make that decision, and it's usually binary.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually right or left, yes or no. As you said on one show, red or blue, and everybody that knows the Matrix knows you
There you
pick
go.
you
Red pill, blue
you,
pill.
you right. So it's those points, and it's not hard. It's because, and it's typically not two bad things oftentimes, because once you get into a certain place, you're choosing one path versus the other, but those paths can have significant different approaches to where you go and what your trajectory is and what you decide to do. And when you look at relationships, oftentimes, not to oversimplify them, but oftentimes it's that simple. It is, do you pick up the card to be considerate, even though you're upset and you stop by
Mm-hmm.
Walgreens and give it?
Right.
Or do you drive straight home knowing that you should have, and then you get
Yeah.
home and then you deal with
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want
Mm-hmm.
for the next 5, 6, 7 days? So do you pick up the shoes that you trip over every
Mm-hmm.
day, but just to
Every
teach
day.
them a lesson, you're not going to pick them up? Again, it's binary. Do I pick them up or do I not? So, help me on, because again, I never put that together like that until this conversation. So doctor, go ahead. Let me
But
hear
that's
you
the
break
thing.
it
Like,
down and add
look,
the
look,
science behind
yeah,
it.
yeah. But that's the thing. As we move through these, like, these tenets of fulfilling your revolution, and we've talked a lot about Revolt and Evolve. We've named the show Revolt and Evolve. But the point is, once you decide that I've got to revolt from X, I've got to then evolve to what? And in the evolution of yourself will require that you make choices, right? Will require. And
Exactly.
the thing for me that has been distilled down so much from this show is that if you can at least have some forethought on what the choices are that you're going to have to make, if you can have some forethought to, like, right, I want to be plant based, right? I want to be more plant based, right? At the end of the year, I want to say that, I ate more plant based than I did meat based. But what are the choices then am I going to have to make? Well, when I go out, right, the choice is going to be, well, there might be some tasty meaty options. I know this is simple, but if I'm revolting and evolving into this to be this plant based person, there I can figure it out. The choice is, what am I going to do when I'm challenged around plant based versus meat based? If I know the choices, okay, that I know that if I'm going to this restaurant and they may not have a lot of plant based options, how do I even want to go? One. Or two, how can I figure out for them to create a plant based option for me? But at least if I know in my process, what are the choices, or some, because we cannot know all of the choices that will happen. What are the choices, some of the choices that will allow me to continue along my revolution that I created as I'm evolving into this revolutionary person of myself? That's the thing. Like, no, and Rashid Thomas said this. He's coming back on the show too. I cannot wait. I cannot
Me
wait.
either.
Right. And the funny thing
Me
about it
either.
is, right, you know, his book is called About That Life. You know?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
book
Yeah.
to add to the library.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
book to add to the library.
Yeah. And that's the thing he talks about. He's like, you have to, as you are moving, you have to know your choice points. And that's the thing. And we've talked so much about, if relationships are the thing, and building a relationship, if it's time and trust because you want to get to vulnerability, you have to choose to exhibit behaviors that will allow people to trust you. Because
Right.
if you don't, that person won't be vulnerable with you, and they won't accept your vulnerability. That's the thing. They
That's
won't.
key.
If I can't trust you, I'm not going to accept your vulnerability. And so
That's
there's a
key.
duality to it. You both have to consciously show up, spend time, learn how to trust each other, because that's when you can be the most vulnerable. But you have to choose that. You have to choose to exhibit behavior. Picking, to me, I know it's simple, but if I look at Saturday's behavior, I'm driving down the road, listening to some good music. There's a choice in there to pick up the phone.
Right.
It's a Saturday. Travis never calls me on a Saturday. In my mind,
That's true.
I got to pick up the phone. Hopefully, in Travis's mind, when we get off the phone, Travis knows I can trust him in those moments, in those dire moments of life. I have a friend that I can pick up the phone and I can call. That's trust. That will allow us to be even better friends. I think about Dr. Elijah Beatty. What allowed us to trust each other is that the time that we spend in New Orleans, like those initial moments post Katrina, when it was just me and him.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right? We're going on 18 years of friendship. Talk every week. But that's time and the ability to trust it. There are very few people in this life that can say the shit that Eli says to me. Right? And I will say, I will take that into consideration. You know what I'm saying?
I know Eli.
I will take that into consideration because it's time and trust. And I choose, right? I make sure that I choose that friendship every day. So that's my thing. Revolution is as we're talking about our 5 tenets, and we're just getting to this: revolt and evolve, and know your choice points. If you know what your revolution is, you're going to have to be a different person. You're going to have to evolve into a different person. But you at least need to know what are some of the choices that you're going to have to make to keep you along the road, to keep you on the path of revolution. You got to know, oh, this is going to come up, right? This person may enter my life. No, not today,
Not
Satan.
the right person. Right.
You're not today. I cannot. All right. I hope you look good. You know what I'm saying? You got talents. You know what I'm saying? You got talents, but not today. Not today. Not tomorrow. I cannot. You know? So that's my thing. Go ahead, bro.
What I was going to say, and you touched on it, was that once you revolt and evolve, your choices should change.
Yeah.
So it allows you to anticipate what they are. When you put yourself in a different space, those things are going to be different. Just like if you're on one road and you have these exits and you have these things, well, when you go to a different road, and sometimes those roads can be miles apart, you're going to have different exits, different choices.
Yeah.
And that's one way how you can kind of prepare for what those new choices are. Now, will you have the answer? No, but you're going to be drawn to where your purpose is. You're going to be drawn to those things that you naturally move into. My father used to have a saying, and initially I didn't agree with it, but I got what he said. And ultimately he had a saying that said, do what you're good at and hopefully you like it. And I said, what? And his point was, the longer you stick with something that you're good at doing, you're going to move into that space effortlessly.
Yeah.
And it's going to give you this freedom of thought, this independence, this this charisma that occurs with it that you wouldn't have as you're trying to, fit, a round peg into a square hole. His point wasn't to be comfortable with complacency. It was to do the 95% to allow you to evolve and have those choices for that 5%. And it wasn't until we started working through, okay, why did he say that? Why is that important? Because again, and the example was, I'm not the tallest person in the world. Let's just say that. I got a lot of spirit, right? How about that? But I made the high school.
He's a spunky. He's got a lot of spunk.
So yeah, but I made the high school basketball team, and I get home and I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm gonna do some work. I'm gonna save up and get some shoes for basketball." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I made the team." And he just looks at me. My dad is shorter than I am.
Wait a minute. We need to let revolutionaries know how tall you are.
Revolutionaries, my media guide height for college was 5'8". So anybody that knows
media height,
my media guide height.
This is the media guide height. So
my media guide height is 5'8".
Subtracted 2 inches. You know what I'm saying?
You nailed it. You nailed it.
There we go. We won't say anymore.
We won't say anymore. Yeah. But his point, and so ultimately he allowed me to play, but he said, son, and not to say that you can't be the one off the one, but you're great in track. You're great in football. They
Mm.
have indoor track. And it was him saying, you making this choice, right, is going to put you down a path where you're going to do something that you might like right then, but you're really good at these other things.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward 4 years or 3 years, I'm at college on a track scholarship,
Right.
right? Not
Mm.
knowing that that was,
Know
you
your
know, but
choice point.
he,
Yes.
exactly, it was that choice point. And it
Mm-hmm.
was him trying to vector me in a way to say, hey, come on, come on. But, and I think once you build trust with people, right? Like with you, if you said, you know, hey, Travis, I think you need to do this. Have you looked at doing this? Have you thought about working on this? I'm really going to take that into consideration because
Yeah, I
I
mean,
feel
the
like
last time I gave you some advice, you said your wife was going to come for me if I said anything about it.
I
So,
knew it was coming up. I threw you that softball. I threw you that
so
softball. You
I
need,
can't give you no
yeah.
advice no more.
But you know what that's going to do when she comes for you? It's a choice point. She going to make
I
that
made the
choice.
choice. I made the
You made the
choice.
choice. She going to make a choice. And ultimately, it's going to build my trust in her because she
You
going to
know
come
what I'm
for you.
saying? I made the choice. I'm glad. I'm glad I don't live. I don't live in Texas.
Oh,
Hey, Miss
yeah.
Bats.
Yeah, she coming for you. I'm telling you, she coming for you. Let it go if you want to. I ain't even worried. You see how free I can be? Get us free. I'm free because I know she got my back. We
That's
spent the
hey. I'm not.
time, had tough conversations, and I trust that she gonna take care of me. But ultimately, those your choices should change. Your choices should
Yeah.
evolve just like you evolve, right? Because and you said this. There are different versions of you that my pastor, Pastor Brown, used to say, the problem with turning over a new leaf, and then I want you to say your analogy after this, is that the old leaf is on the other side. And the problem with doing leaf work is
Yeah.
that we just get blown in the wind.
Yeah. That's right. You got to do that root work.
Game time.
Yeah, yeah, you got to do that.
That's
You
the
got to,
piece.
yeah, yeah. Shout out to Eric Thomas. I got to, hey, I didn't get that. I didn't make that up. I give people the credit where they do. Shout out to Eric Thomas
Excellent.
for that work. You know, brother, we've been doing this, man, and look, it always flies by, and it is an enjoyable time to spend with you. Like doing these segments, these shows, this revolt and evolve as we move through this space together, having poignant poignant conversations about a host of topics. But at Revolutionaries, I want you to know, as you're thinking about this, as we move through these five tenets and the accompanying conversations that go along with them, as you fulfill your revolution, make sure that you are revolting and evolving into the person that you want to be. And know your choice points. Like figure out what they are. Write them down, right? If you to get to your revolution, you have to do this. I need to make these choices when X comes up. Because if you know I need to make this choice, right? You most likely will actually make the correct choice because you know it's coming. You're prepared for it. Brother, look, the floor is yours. Close us out here, Dr. Bax. Bring
Close
the
us out.
revolution home.
Well, where we started in this conversation. So always thank you for the opportunity to just learn from you, to have more time, to invest more time into the relationship that we're building, to help other people reach their revolution. Um, from our standpoint, or from my standpoint, this has been an evolution of
Mm,
thought, of emotion. Not the easiest conversation to have when I harken back to my father and my
hmm.
recent
Yeah,
relationship with another man who kind of filled in that role.
yeah,
But what you all have been able to see or hear, for that matter, is when two people who, number one, have spent time, who trust each other, and who understand that ultimately moving forward and evolving is a choice.
yeah,
But
yes.
those choices have to evolve,
Hmm.
right? Where we go from now is
Yeah, that's
totally,
true.
or where you go from now is totally predicated
Mhm.
on those decisions that you make. So moving forward, I just want everyone to, number one, value the time that you have with whoever you have in your life,
Yeah,
whether that's a
yeah,
parent, a friend, a coworker. And number two, don't forget the opportunities that you have to pull someone else along with you
yeah.
as you revolt
Mm,
and evolve.
that's right. No, your revolution is not just for you. We'll get there. We'll get to that. But yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I appreciate you. Um, and I look forward to the next episode of Revolt and Evolve with Dr. Travis Batts and Dr. Charles Corporate as we do our thing. And make sure that Revolutionaries, you're going and listening to this brother's podcast, the
About That Life podcast, the
Yeah.
podcast about life or living intentionally forever.
There we go. Living intentionally forever. You know, that's what we want to. We want to live forever. Shout out to our boy Tyshawn Bryant, CEO of Green Regimen, and the things that he's doing. Go back and listen to that episode of Tyshawn talking about how to live to 100, and the latest episode that's out prior to this is with Curran Swint. Karan Swint. I mess that brother's name up all the time, but he is the CEO and founder of KRT and QRT Cycling, a wonderful fashion brand that actually brings community together. So make sure that you are checking that out, uh, and supporting everybody and everything that comes on the show. This is what this platform is, right? To make sure that Dr. Betts, right, the world can see that this brother, the world renowned cardiologist, is out here saving the world. And if you all knew, like, he is a true Jamaican. He knows how to do everything. he got 10 jobs, man. So, Revolutionaries, you know we love you, that we're here for you. We can't wait. We can't wait for the next time that we spend some time with you. We love you. We love you. We love you. And we see you next time. Take care. Peace.